All right, this is take one. Boys in school, how to improve outcomes for your toughest customers. I'm going to start out by telling you a story. This happened in Africa. It's actually a true story. There was a village in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, kind of the roughest part, where due to the price of ivory, uh, the mature male elephants, because of their tusks, had been poached to near uh, extinction, just in that area. In other words, there just weren't any grown men elephants around. And so the younger male elephants were a huge problem. And they were coming into where people were and knocking stuff over and stealing food and doing all this crap. That was bad. And, villagers had never had this problem before the absence of the grown males. And the solution was to import mature male elephants from another part of Africa. And once those mature male elephants showed up, all of the problems with the younger adolescent elephants went away. And it just goes to show you that that mature masculine presence, that father presence, uh, it solves a lot of problems before they become problems. I'm Travis Neville. Um, why should you listen to me on this topic? Uh, well, I have a master's degree in teaching from Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan. And my bachelor's is in secondary education. I used to be a high school English teacher. And that's from Northern Michigan University. Go Cats. Um, I taught high school English and some PE, a little bit of auto shop, which I'm proud of, for 11 years. And during that time, I also coached multiple sports. The primaries were football and track and field. Had a lot of success in track and field specifically while I was teaching. I had a state champion, some runners up, a bunch of all state athletes, things like that. Really enjoyed that. And then after teaching, I was involved with coaching at the second biggest high school in Michigan, coaching football. Had a lot of success there too. Had the best season in the history of the school while I was there. So I've been doing this stuff. I've been doing the job that you guys do every day. And I understand it. Geez, I came from teaching. My dad was a middle school teacher for 36 years. My mom also was a middle school teacher. She taught for 20. So I was raised in that kind of household. I mean, I think that this is one of those careers that teaching isn't just a thing you do. It's who you are. You are a teacher. That's who you are. It's how you think. It's how you move around in the world. It's who you are. It's you're lucky to be doing this job. Okay. Now, as much as I will dissuade people from becoming teachers, uh, or at least say, you know what? Yeah, do it for 5 years, 10 years, and then go do something else. Take your time, serve your country essentially, and then get out and go do something else, which is what I'm doing. As much as I think that now, it wasn't always that way. I mean, when my parents were teachers, it was a different environment than it is now. And long story short, I absolutely respect you guys, and that's not out of nowhere. Like I said, I've done the job, so thank you. Um, so yes, I have a background in education, and but since then, I've written 3 books, each of which essentially deals with men, masculinity. My first book, The Jossman Method, is a fairly standard self-help book. It is certainly geared towards males. It's a 12-step process at how to get through something difficult in your life. Very proud of that. It was my first book. After that, I started podcasting, and when you start doing that and you're an author, all of a sudden you have a little bit more credibility than you had before, which is pretty cool. So I got a chance to talk to other authors, psychologists, anthropologists, um, relationship experts, evolutionary biologists, gender studies professionals on all sides of all issues here dealing with men and women. And I've been able to learn a lot. I mean, it's a field that interests me. Um, and I use that information, once as I've learned things, I've then written books about it, essentially. And my books are the publication of my research, essentially. The second book I wrote in 2022 is the one that's the most popular. It's called Ideal Man: Reviving Masculinity. It is specifically a manual for younger men to follow. It's, hey, this is the world you're facing. These are the problems you're going to bump into. These are the issues you're going to have. These are the issues you're going to have. And here are the habits you need to build in your life so that you can be strong, powerful, able, so that you can be of good to your kingdom, to your circle, to your wife, to your children, to your employer, to your employees, to your neighbors, to your community. These are the skills, these are the habits that are being lost. Um, they're not, there's just too many boys who are not taught these things anymore. And we'll go into some of the reasons for that later. And then in 24 here recently, I wrote a follow-up book to Ideal Man: Reviving Masculinity. This one is called Ideal Man: Mastering Masculinity, and that is sort of a midlife checkpoint for any man. These are the things that, if you've been practicing the habits of reviving masculinity, these are the things that you in midlife will be able to count as rewards, outcomes, honors, as a result of having, staying vigilant about the habits that I outline in reviving masculinity. Things like love and camaraderie and family and home, things that will be in your life if you're handling yourself right. Essentially, the dynamic between those two books is, first, in order to be of service, in order to be the man that you need to be, you've got to have something to offer. So you build that power first, and then mastering masculinity is certainly a description, a dissection of different ways that you will have given it away at this point in your life, different ways that you'll have used it, your power as a man, to mentor, to protect, to provide, to be a knight out there in the world with a K, K knight out in the world. So those are the three books I've written so far on this journey. This presentation here today represents sort of the culmination of all my research thus far. My plan is to have a book about what you're going to learn about today, and that'll come in due time. It's got to start somewhere, and I'm just choosing to start by talking to you teachers. So before we actually get rolling again, that's just an introduction to me, who I am, what I do. I want to lay down some ground rules for today. Number one, and this is extremely important, okay, is we're going to talk about some things that are going to ruffle your feathers, all right? And you're going to be tempted to knee jerk, fire back, and parrot back things that you've heard from the media, from social media, from TV, from screens, from your phone, things that other people have parroted back that they've heard from the government, from universities, from Hollywood. And I'm going to encourage you to please think critically through that. And I'm going to say, and that's why I'm laying down this one ground rule today. Your feelings don't matter. Today, it's just facts. All right, we're going to deal with facts and not feelings. That's how today is going to go. All right. So when I'm talking about a subject, I'm going to be very factual. I'm going to give you the numbers. I'm going to give you the outcomes. And you are going to be tempted to knee jerk into, well, that's because of XYZ. That's because of this. That's not why we're here. Okay. We're not here to talk about why all of this is happening too much. We're here to talk about what we can do to fix it. Okay. That's your job as teachers. You are to educate, especially in the high school. We'll call it the whole education system, K through 12 education. You are an adult factory. Okay, they come in, they're 5 years old, and even you're in a high school teacher, they come in, they're 13, they're kids, they're little kids. Some of them haven't hit puberty, right? But they leave, they're 18, and they can vote and they can go to war, and they're legally adults. They can go to jail for the rest of their lives for crimes that they've committed. Okay, so you are an adult factory, So we've got to look at the numbers here, and we've got to address the numbers and figure out ways to combat those numbers. That's rule number one. Your feelings don't matter. Only feelings. Rule number two, exceptions do not invalidate rules. Say it one more time. Exceptions do not invalidate rules. Okay? Let me give you an example. If someone has a gun to your head, okay, it's a bad guy. That's a bad guy, right? You're helpless, totally defensive. And another person is also armed, and they have the shot and they can take out that bad guy, be it a policeman or a concerned bystander, somebody with a CPL holder, whoever it is. And that person takes that shot and takes out that bad guy who had that gun to your head. Would that be murder? You know, thou shalt not kill, right? Well, this person has killed, but it's obvious, right, that that person is going to be protecting life from a wolf, and so therefore that person would not be, I'm sure, convicted of murder. Would not be convicted of murder, right? So in that way, now if we look at that, that's an exception to the rule that murder is illegal, right? But due to that exception, should we make it so that murder is legal? Just so that that one person in that exception isn't going to have a problem. Do we invalidate or take apart massive truths over tiny little exceptions to those truths? No, we don't. So remember that. I'm going to say it one more time. Exceptions do not invalidate rules. And what we're talking about today are rules. Rules and facts, okay? Not feelings. All right, let's dig in here. Here's the problem. Boys are roughly pretty specifically, 78% of discipline referrals in public schools. And that's a statistic from the U.S. Department of Education. Okay? Why? You know, why is it? Why is that the case? Well, is it because boys will be boys? Or is it because teachers don't know how to handle boys? Could it be that? Could it be the fact that that same number, 78%, 78% of public school teachers are women? Could that possibly be a rub? Not going to say a problem. Glad you're here. Glad you're doing the job. Could it be? Yeah, I think it could be. Okay, now I'm going to tell you there's a big difference between boys and girls. I know that the media is going to tell you that, oh, gender is a social construct and all that stuff. But beyond the obvious biological differences, if you've ever tried coaching boys or coaching girls, you'll know there's a big difference. Okay, I've tried coaching girls. It's totally different dynamic. Okay, I know I'm not that good at it. Men and women are different. Okay, men, think about this. Men can't understand what it's like to grow a baby inside them like a woman can. Right? So there's a big difference. That's a biological difference, but it certainly leads to effectual differences, ways of thinking, ways of moving about in the world. So if that can be true, then this can be true as well. Um, the bully story. So your boy's getting bullied at school. We'll say he's a fourth grader. And he comes home from school and he complains of the bullying or whatever's going on. And mom, you're going to want to go down there to the school, maybe give that principal a stern finger wagging, maybe get a hold of the other boy's mother and talk to her about it. And you want to protect your kid. That's natural for you. Nurturing, warmth, caring, protection. This is what mothers do. And it's beautiful. Okay, but dad knows. Come on downstairs, son. Get those hands up. Let me show you how and when to commit to violence to protect yourself. Because you, as a mom, you want to protect your son. That's a great motivation. But really, what you're teaching him is that his safety, his personal safety, is not his own responsibility. Is that the kind of man you want to raise? Is that the kind of man you want in your life? Somebody that believes that it's not my job to protect myself or others, right? Again, great motivation, mom. But there's some dynamics here. Dad's going to understand that, hey, this is how a man needs to take care of himself. And you won't understand that, mom. And so that shaking hands between men and women needs to occur in that case. So again, just illustrating that the differences, men and women are different. Another statistic, boys drop out of school more often than girls. And that's from the U.S. Department of Education. It's actually pretty drastic. I mean, boys drop out at like 3 times more often than girls do. Um, and what's the cause of that, right? Well, I'll tell you this: no one thrives in an environment where your primary input is to be scolded when you make a mistake. Okay, and when those mistakes that you're making, air quotes mistakes, are things that are natural parts of your genetic makeup, well, then that's very confusing, right? And we can go into this a little bit more later, but uh, the dodgeball thing, okay, that's very competitive. It's very aggressive. It's a thing that boys are. Okay, they are that, and that's been institutionally deleted from schools, right? Wrestling around, roughhousing, rough and tumble play. This is what boys do. And a female teacher, it just isn't hardwired into you to understand that. Okay. And that's where these shortfalls are happening. And that's at the end of, towards the end of this presentation, I'll be giving you some tools to do that. But next stat, males make up 93% of those incarcerated in the United States. That's from the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. Let me say that one more time. If you look at everyone in jail in the U.S., 93% of them are males. Now, I'll tell you that this has been the attitude of the government, and I'm not a big booker of the government. I don't like to refer to them in a state that grants them power over me any more than they already have. But that's real simple. It's because it's cheaper. It's easier to punish bad men than it is to make good men. Okay? It's easier to punish bad men than it is to create good men. Creating a good man takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of diligence and effort. And people just don't want to do that. Now, it's cheaper to make good men than it is to punish the bad ones. It costs a lot of money to keep somebody in prison. A lot of money. And that's taxpayer money. Just saying. They get, it cost, if you guys probably know your per pupil dollar amount coming from the government, maybe between $7,000 and $9,000 per kid is probably what you get per year to educate them. Now, granted, they're only there 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, whatever. But you're feeding them a lot of pieces there. Um, and it's like $50,000 a year to have a prisoner. Okay, costs a lot more. Um, Males commit suicide at 350% the rate of females. So, um, yes, it's true that females attempt suicide more often than men, but the bottom line is this: there are 3.5 dead boys for every dead girl. It's pretty sobering, isn't it? Yeah, and that's you're not hearing about it because of this phrase that I've often used with football players, and that's suffer in silence. That's a thing that men do. They suffer in silence. Homeless population is significantly more male than female. I'm sure that doesn't shock you. That's also FBI.gov. As of this writing, men earn only 39% of college degrees in the United States. 39%. And that's from the U.S. Department of Education. 39% of college degrees are earned by men. Now, in 1960, the numbers were flip-flopped. The men earned 60%, women earned 40%, and now men are underachieving further than women did 60 years ago. 39% of college degrees are earned by men. Here's one that's going to shock you. Divorce in the United States, 78% are filed by women. And among college-educated couples, 92% of divorces are filed by women. So before you start saying that men are deadbeat dads and men are breaking up homes, and well, eventually the buck's got to stop somewhere. And one person went down to the courthouse and chose to break up her family, and it wasn't him. Between 78 and 92%, it's women doing it. And that's because the legal system is fairly heavily slanted against men. We'll talk about this more a little bit later too, but in the United States, no matter what crime you commit, be it murder, rape, tax evasion, fraud, shoplifting, whatever it is, on average, a woman is going to get a 30% discount in penalties just for being a woman. Okay? That's how it goes. All right? So the legal system, for whatever reason, is far harsher with men, 30% harsher than it is with women. And in fact, the family court's no different. Okay, men get custody of their children less than 20% of the time in a divorce situation. And that also, 35% of fathers currently live apart from their children. That's census.gov. Again, these are all federal government websites I'm getting these numbers from, I'm not making them up. So those are some fairly stark numbers as far as what's kind of causing the issue that you're seeing in your classroom every day with boys. Okay. Um, so, but boys will be boys, right? Like you hear that all the time. Like, oh, boys will be boys. Well, what's that mean? Well, so that's kind of the rationale that education official will give for coming down on a boy. Boys will be boys, so of course they're going to act out. Of course they're going to misbehave. Of course they're going to be rambunctious. All this stuff. Well, we've got to fix that. We've got to make them not be that way. How crushing is that? Imagine if the dynamic, if the standards were we got to make these girls not act like women. We got to make them act more like boys. Because that's essentially what you're telling a boy in school. That's what they're feeling, at least. Look at all these girls performing. Why can't I? There must be something wrong with me, right? And again, that's getting into feelings, which I try not to do. But, so how are boys different than girls? Anybody know? Anybody want to take a shot at that? This isn't what is a woman. You don't have to worry about stepping on your tongue here. Just shout it out. What do you got? Well, I would tell you this. Girls become women biologically. Okay, it's internal. They're going to want to hold that baby, become a mother. Maternity, it's genetic. Okay, it's a thing that comes out from within you. Okay, and boys go through puberty. Yes, they get stronger, faster, broader shouldered, deeper voiced, more well haired. All those physical changes happen, but it leads to less. It does not lead them into manhood behaviorally. It only leads them into manhood physically. And those are two very different things. When you take a boy and put him in a man's body, he's can cause a lot of damage. Okay, so behaviorally is what we're focused on here. Now I'm going to read you a quote from Joseph Campbell. Big fan of him. He's a philosopher. This is from his interview with a guy named Bill Moyers, published in a book called The Power of Myth. He said, the girl becomes a woman with her first menstruation. It happens to her. Nature does it to her. Okay. The boy has to be turned into a man and voluntarily become a servant of something greater than himself. Okay, I'm going to read that second part again. The boy has to be turned into a man and voluntarily become servant of something greater than himself. And it's no wonder that men gravitate towards things like team sports, towards the military, towards fire, police, all of these places where there's a camaraderie, a brotherhood, a service, a place to build and work on something bigger than him, to serve the patch on your shoulder. Those careers are still dominated by men. And because they're choosing to serve something greater than themselves. And in fact, isn't that indeed what it is to be a father? To serve something greater than yourself. And that's these children who are going to outlive you, are going to be your legacy, are going to go do amazing things, outperform you. I hear this all the time that the only man who will ever want you to do better than he did is your father. And that's very true. I've been lucky. I've had a great dad, and he cheers for me with every cool thing I get to do. He's always right there cheering me on. So more about that, how a boy becomes a man. Boys become men socially, like I said. It comes from the outside. Okay. He has to be turned into a man by circumstances, by environment. Um, boys have to see grown men, whom they respect, of course, doing it right. Fathers, older brothers, uncles, coaches, etc. They're all influences in what kind of a man a boy becomes. You know, you follow your father primarily, but you have peripheral influences as well, of course. Manhood is bestowed upon him by other men. I can remember various rites of passage in my life, which were minor in scope, but massive in how I felt differently as at the end of them. Um, my Uncle Ralph, we call him Big R, said when the Fab Five thing happened. Remember, Chris Webber called the timeout. He came to me and he said, "Listen, T, uh, I want you to tell me what you think about that." I said, "Well, man, they don't get there without him. That's the bottom line. So I'm gonna give him a pass." And he said, "All right, from now on, you don't have to call me Uncle Ralph. You can call me Big R." And I felt like, man, what a cool thing. Like that was a rite of passage for me. So it is. It's bestowed upon you by other men. It's always been that way, and it has to do with how men treat you, how men look at you, what they expect from you. Okay, more examples about that kind of thing later. But just know that boys become men socially. Okay, they've got to have role models. Okay, whereas a girl usually doesn't need a role model to be a good mother. Will it help? Of course. Role models are always good. Mentors are always good. Of course, they don't need it. Some more statistics here. You can look at this graphic. The father absence crisis in America. 18.4 million children, that's 1 in 4, without a biological step or adoptive father at home. No kind of male role model. 1 in 4, okay, with absolutely nothing, no male at home at all. Um, Research shows when a child is raised in a father-absent home, they're affected in the following ways, and these are pretty drastic as well. 4 times greater risk of poverty, more likely to have behavioral problems, and you guys see that every day. 2 times greater risk of infant mortality, and I can get into that a little bit more. Actually, I'll tell you right now. So, in your DNA strand, excuse me, the double helix, right? At the end of those strands, there are these little tails called telomeres, and they predict some pretty serious things in a human. The length of those telomeres, the longer they are, the longer your life is going to be. The longer they are, the more likely you are to reproduce. And these are the numbers now, okay? When you're a boy and you are raised without a father in the home, those tails are shorter by an average of 40%-ish, 38 to 42%, something like that. So you will not live as long. You are less likely to reproduce. You don't have a dad at all. Pretty crazy, isn't it? More likely to go to prison, more likely to commit crime. 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teen if you're a girl. If you don't have a dad at home, you are 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teen. Yeah, that's crazy. More likely to face abuse and neglect. There's no dad there to protect you. Okay, it's that's pretty obvious, right? More likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. There's no dad to slap you on the back of the head and tell you you're not doing that anymore. You're twice as likely to suffer obesity without your dad at home. You're 2 times more likely to drop out of school as well without dad in your home. Now, and how bad is again, I told you 18.4 million children. No male at home at all. That's 25% of our population. 25%. But I think we're at 43% now. I just looked this up a couple weeks ago. 43% of American boys grow up in a home that is fatherless at some point. Okay, so maybe dad was there till you're 3, 4 years old, and then mom kicked him out, or your parents got divorced when you're 16. So at any point between 0 and 18, 43% of boys are going to experience a home without dad. So without fathers, older brothers, and very involved uncles and coaches, without that guy there. Again, boys are going to learn something. They're going to figure out how to act somehow. They've got to figure out how to live their lives, right? So where are they going to go without those guys? Well, they're going to go to what they see on screens because that's all that's left. They can't go to school and see it. Again, especially in the elementary level, it's over 80% female. At the middle school level, it's over 70% female. When at the high schools I taught at, it was usually about 60-40, something like that, 60% female, 40% male. So not a lot of male teachers. And again, you're only seeing them a couple hours a day, maybe. So they're going to go to screens. What do you got? You got Homer Simpson. He is, it's no coincidence that he popped out, in 1989. Some things were drastically changing in universities and in the media around that time. It's a third wave of feminism. We can go into that more later if you want to. But what was started to happen was marketers, okay, people who figured out how to make money selling things, or you'd go to them and they'd tell you how to make money selling things, started figuring out that women were making most of the financial decisions in home. And today it's 80%, roughly 80% of financial decisions in the United States are made by women. So marketers, they market to women. So they're trying to sell things to women. So you get Homer Simpson, who's a bumbling goof. He's funny, he's great, he's hilarious, all that stuff. But he's not a man. I mean, biologically he is. He's not respected at work. His kids don't respect him. He's shown as a bumbling idiot. Okay. Before that, you know, we had Alan Thicke and John Gross, and we had, Andy Griffith. We had real solid dads on TV. Men who were quietly strong and shared wisdom and improved boys. Okay. And right around 1990, that started to go away. So what these boys who are seeing now, and again, the kids that you're seeing have been watching TV and watching stuff on screens way past the 90s. So it's gotten much worse. But that's really when it started. You're not seeing good, strong males leading their families. And if you really take a look at any national broadcast, watch the commercials, pay attention. Who are they marketing to? Okay, it's pretty obvious. And they should, what do women want to see? Because they're being fed this message of you need to be powerful, strong. I don't need no man. And so that's the message. That's what sells. So they're going to look at screens and they're not going to see anything worth a crap be in life. So what's the solution here? Okay, I just did a pretty brief. I mean, I could spend 3 hours talking about statistics, about what the problem is, but I'm sure you teachers are interested in what are the solutions here. What can we do about this, Travis? Okay, great presentation, cool. We didn't know all that stuff you're bringing. Awareness, that's not the thing I do. I'm not an advocate. I'm not a activist. I'm none of those A words. I'm just a guy who does research on these things and writes books about them, publishing the research. So what can we do? How can we help as teachers? I hope that's what you've been thinking this whole time. I don't want to be that guy who just comes in and complains and doesn't offer solutions. So here are some solutions. And I'm going to be somewhat brief about this because it is just a first run through this. But there are some very hands-on things you can do. So in my second book, Reviving Masculinity, where I talk about the habits that are going to make you effective as a man. These are habits that a lot of research went into them, and they are in line with what genetically a man is going to want to be. Things like honor, duty, honesty, being decisive, being accountable, being instinctive. These are all things, being bold, competitive. And these are things that you can tap into as a teacher. I'm going to give you some examples here. So competitiveness, you got to bring competition back into your classroom. I don't care how you do it. I know that it's been washed out from the top down for a long time. That was happening when I was teaching. Okay, and I was in the classroom I was in education, how about this, from, so we'll say 1998 until 2012. And at that time, things were pretty washed out. I can remember my first teaching job, 22 years ago or whatever it was. And I wanted to set up a dodgeball game. The other PE teacher came over and said, we can't do that anymore. No more dodgeball because it's exclusive. Okay, because kids get knocked out of the game. But it's massively competitive, and that's a thing that boys are going to be tapped into. They'll be fully engaged in your classroom if you can find a way to introduce competition in your classroom somehow. Okay, and that can be you can uh, do speed stuff. Okay, all right, we're going to do this activity. First one done gets ABC. I can remember that my teachers in elementary school were doing this spelling quiz. You got to get them all right now. They got to all be right or it doesn't count. But First one to get it done, and they're all right, you get the gold star on that board. Okay. And let me tell you what, I lived for those gold stars. Okay. I really did. Um, and in order to get past that piece, the competitiveness thing, you got to accept this. The self-esteem movement, it's been a failure. Okay, just know that. Started in the 70s in education, and it has failed. Okay, it has caused more harm than good. We're producing extremely weak people who are unable to handle themselves, handle their lives, move forward. The ones who have two great parents at home and are being pushed and their situation at home is good, they're successful. Oh my gosh, holy cow. But the ones who aren't, we've got to step in and help those. Okay, and we do this with boys by doing things like introducing competition in your classroom. And again, on a longer presentation, if I were in front of a group here, I would have 6 or 7 different activities that I would hand out to you that you could do. Second big piece for boys, they love risk taking. Okay, I call it boldness in the book. How can you get risk taking involved in your classroom? I don't want them walking tightropes, although if you could do that safely, I would say do it because that's a thing boys would want to do. There's a natural instinct, inclination to take risks. You can do it this way. This is a thing I had tremendous success with boys specifically in my class. I would introduce risk taking with quizzes. I would do it like this. Say, all right, so guys, you're getting this quiz on Friday, and I'm going to set the over under at 82%. I think that the average for the class is going to be about 82% on this quiz. So I'll tell you what, I'll bet you 10% that you can't get to that average. Okay, and how that works is this: if you take that gamble, if you take that bet from me, okay, it's going to go like this. If you score over 82%, I'll spot you 5%. So now you get 87 or 10% or whatever you want. But if you go under 82%, I'm taking away 10%, right? And in a world where you get 50% for a zero, that's just ridiculous. Okay, I think we can all agree that that hasn't succeeded with anyone. That has helped no one. Okay, um, so that's a great way to introduce risk taking. Let them bet on, I believe I can achieve at this rate. And there's a carrot out in front of me and a sharp stick in the back. That's risk taking. Boys are going to go nuts for that. I used to, actually, I still do. I got a close friend. He's got a young son. He's probably 7, 8 years old. And I'll have him, he knows when I'm over there, there's going to be some risk taking. So he's got a bowl on his dresser with a bunch of quarters in it. And I always bring a bag of quarters myself. And we'll start making bets. Like, I'll be like, all right, man, I'll bet you 2 quarters. The town is 2 quarters. We're sitting out there at the basketball hoop that you can't hit a shot from here. And boom, he'll either take it or miss it. And I'll take his money or he'll take mine. And we'll go back and forth like that. And he will be fully engaged in that activity for 2 hours. Okay. And this is a kid who's a little ADHD, like a little spastic, but he will be absolutely on target. Okay. And that's what you're trying to do, right? As a teacher, engagement. You can't do anything without that. Okay. This is a way to get engagement going. Okay. For boys specifically. And there's nothing about that that's ever going to hurt a girl. Do it that way. They'll raise their marks too. A fourth piece that you can bring into your class that will certainly appeal to boys is accountability. Okay, like I told you with the gold star for the spelling quiz for me, that was an advertisement of my success. Okay, so that's the positive side of accountability. That's, hey, I did that. Look there, that's my name. Look at all those gold stars. I got those. And the other side of that, the negative side, is when they get poor grades, hey, we post them. We post them with names. Okay. I know you guys are cringing at that, but accountability is massive for boys. When they know that everyone's going to know if they fail, that's going to motivate them to stay engaged and learn the material. That's it. What else do you want from them? Okay. It cannot be, again, feelings have to be secondary here. We're trying to produce helpful, healthy, productive young people, specifically young men, with regard to what we're talking about today. And you're gonna have to set your feelings aside sometimes. It's just how it is. Okay. Call outs, I like it when I always liked it when a kid failed in my class because I could help them fix it. I'd rather you fail in my class when you're 14, 15 years old, flat on your back over something, grades or something happened at home and you're in my classroom, we're talking about it because I can help coach you through that failure. And you can see through my eyes that I believe in you, that you'll get through it and you'll be okay. where when they're 25, not really anybody there for them. Okay. So you got to realize that you're a surrogate parent, especially you male teachers. Okay. You're going to have these boys are going to be looking to you. They're trying to figure out what it is to be a man. They feel this impending pressure that they're going to have to be that and they don't know how to do it. That's got to come from you. And I know you've all done it. You've all role modeled and you've been very successful, I'm sure. You've got your Facebook messages from kids, your calls from kids. Geez, I got a call from a kid named Michael Gerstein. Kid, he's probably 30 something now. And he told me, Mr. Neville, um, you know, through middle school, none of the teachers valued my writing. But I wrote a paper in your class, and you liked it so much that you read pieces of it in front of everybody. And you laughed genuinely at what I wrote. He's like, you understood me. You got my sense of humor. No one had ever valued my writing before. And I was so happy to hear that from Michael. My question back to him was, did you ever grow a mustache? Because he famously was very bald-faced and always wanted a mustache. And he did. He had, in fact, grown a mustache. But I looked at his signature line at the bottom of the email, and he is a writer for the Chicago Tribune. I couldn't be prouder. So these are the things these are the responsibilities that are on your shoulders as teachers, of course, right? And these are the rewards that hopefully you'll glean in the end. Last piece I'm going to share with you here, and again, in a longer presentation, I'll give you way more hands-on things that you can do here. But hierarchy, okay, any way you can put hierarchy into your classroom, men naturally respond to that, men naturally understand it, men naturally respect it. You've got to find a way to get that in there. Now, you could easily do that by saying, Johnny, and I recommend that Johnny be either the biggest personality, or maybe one of your troubled kids, or the tallest kid, or someone who has some sort of a natural standout tendency, right? Give them some responsibility. Say, listen, Johnny's in charge of XYZ. He's the king of lined paper. He is the king of, you know, collecting the quizzes at the end of the day. Johnny's going to take care of making sure everybody's got a pencil when they come in, something like that. And you give him the tools to do it, so it's not a huge deal. He doesn't have to remember. It's not a massive responsibility on him as far as action, but it is a responsibility as far as perception, how people see him. When you put power in the hands of a kid like that, he understands the weight of it, and he'll perform. And it will take away a problem from your classroom. Instead of having to deal with him, you have him deal with others, right? Hierarchy, that's a good one. And of course, like I said, we build our power and then we give it away. Just so, Johnny can understand this, that you got a responsibility for the week. Okay, that's a thing you can teach every day. We don't do these things. We don't build great men for them. I mean, essentially, yes, we do, but how men impact the world. I spent a bunch of time at the beginning telling you guys statistics about what happens when men aren't good at being men, when men aren't in families, when men aren't impacting their kingdom, how quickly things go downhill, all the way back to the elephant story, right? Um, so when we build good ones, it affects everyone positively in the opposite direction, right? So that's what you can do, those four things. Again, those are two just very brief tips. I've got a lot more information there when you see the whole presentation, but the last piece is this. So that's what you're doing. And then the last piece is this. Who do you need to be? How can you clean up your presentation as an adult, as a person, as a teacher, as a professional in your classroom to be more palatable to boys, essentially? Um, well, rigor and self-discipline, okay? We've got to bring that into the classroom. I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times from your administrators. Let's raise the bar high and give them all the tools to get there. Well, that helps, okay? The more challenging, the more bold a situation, the more likely a man is going to want to respond to it. And I give you research on that too. Second thing, instructors need to exercise premier emotional regulation. You've all had the days where you lost it, right? You lost your composure in front of the kids, especially early in your careers. But the moment you do that, pretty much all is lost, okay? Men are built to respect men, other people, other adults, other Put people above them in hierarchy who are going to display the qualities that would make you effective in battle, essentially. Okay? It's things like calmness in the face of adversity. So no matter what they're doing, you stay calm. It's not a big deal. You will handle it. You'll get respect from boys when you do that. Um, you've got to be decisive about things. You can't be wishy-washy. That's a male trait. Because they're never gonna emulate someone they don't respect. Somebody who's sad, shameful, fearful, all these other negative emotions, losing control and yelling. Um, that's not a person you respect. It's a person you feel bad for and don't respect. Um, yeah, so you've got to, command that respect. Not in a you need to respect me way, but handling yourself as an upstanding, confident, solid adult. The more you can do that, the more you're going to be able to impact boys for sure. And again, none of that is going to do anything but help girls. And one last thing, I'm sure 100 of you guys have been asking this question. Well, what's this going to do for girls? How's this going to help girls? Well, what kind of a man, what kind of a boy do you want your daughter dating? What kind of a man do you want in uniform when something bad happens? What kind of a man do you want as a leader in a, I don't know, political party or the leader of your building or a woman? Um, Good men benefit women at every level. Okay? Good, strong men who are capable, generous, strong, and able um, are the best thing for the whole world. Okay? I'm not getting too grandiose here. Better for kids, better for wives, better for mothers. Okay, better for everyone. Good men help everybody. So there it is, a little sneak peek into me being in your school district, helping to teach your teachers how to better engage boys and decrease that big number there. 78% of discipline referrals in public schools are boys, right? Let's start fixing that problem. It isn't because boys will be boys, it's because we're not handling them right. That's it. That's it. And there are a ton of ways that we can do that better. Okay, I'm Travis Neville. I wrote 3 pretty good books I'd recommend you check out with regard to how this presentation goes. You probably want the second one, Ideal Man Reviving Masculinity. You can get a hold of me at jossmanmethod@gmail.com, JOSSMAN method@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to come out to your school and give you a hand with this stuff. I can help your school have better outcomes and help these boys be great.